Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Open Discussion, and we are talking about how to save comic shops and the entire comic industry. And before I continue, I do want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by my friend Preston Poulter. Right now, if you go to pocketjackcomics.com and sign up for his email list, he will send you 3 PDF copies of his book. And also, everybody who buys from my eBay store, Pop Anime Comics Collectibles, will get a free copy of White Lily issue 4 out of 5. And I do want to remind everybody that I do have some exclusive merch in my shop, in particular, this little bad boy, Incomplete Hollow Foil, because yes, I bought all 15 of those, and there are only 15 of them made. So if you would like one of those, you have to buy from me. But enough about that. Enough about that, because I have with me, joining me, and potentially other people might come in and out, Nandor Fox, who has a Kickstarter going on. So before I guess we get into the topic, why don't you tell people what's going on with you, your Kickstarter, where people can find it, what it's about, and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew, for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm happy to be a part of this discussion. So right now, I have the Fabled Offering on Kickstarter, and we're at the week mark. We only have 1 week left. So before it ends, it's going to end next Friday evening at 8 p.m. Central Time. So it is a 40-page sci-fi fantasy one-shot that follows a grand princess, a warrior princess, on a quest to save herself and her kingdom from her past traumas, and she is aiming to get to the ancient Sizen, this one of the ancient deities of this world, to present an offering. Will Sizen accept her offering? So it's a exploration of what it means to like be faced with impossible choices, and it's a really gritty, dark story that will take you places that not many comics dare to go. And I describe it as, I want this comic to leave your jaw dropping while a tear falls down your cheek. So that's kind of the goal and the intention behind the book. It's a beautiful book. I have 6 different covers. I worked with a lot of amazing artists on the covers, and I'm working with Marco Roblin on the interiors, and DC Hopkins is lettering the book. And it's unlike anything else you'll find in crowdfunding right now. So yeah, I hope guys will check it out. Like I said, there's only a week left. So if you love Heavy Metal Magazine, if you love Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Elder Scrolls, this is the world, the kind of world that you can just like escape into and get a very character driven narrative that is, like I said, very dark, but um, very exciting to be a part of. So, and it is a one shot. It tells a complete story from beginning, middle, and end, and you get an entire character arc. And depending on how well received the book is, and how well we do in terms of how much we fund and everything, I'll definitely. Marco and I definitely want to expand this universe, expand this world, and like do more in it. So we'll see what happens.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We can only hope. In crowdfunding right now, it's tough. To
It
put it
is.
nicely, put it nicely. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm being gentle today. I'm being very gentle because I had a really good day yesterday, and I know when I win completely. So I'm being very gentle when I say crowdfunding is. And if anybody saw my Facebook reel, you know exactly what I was doing last night. So there you go. But I digress. But I do want to get into the topic because of open discussion, and because I like the topic of how to save comic shops, and I think you made a video on it, and I have a very different opinion than most people. Obviously, this kind of started because of Ben Dunn had an opinion, Tyler Carpenter had an opinion, and then I think 50 other people jumped in breaking down their opinions. And then you made a video. And so, what is your view on that? Is the best place I think to start, because you had an interesting opinion as well.
Yeah, so and also people like Mark Millar has been, he's been tweeting out about how to save the comic book industry, and what shops are struggling with, and he's had some really interesting threads, and a lot of people have you know joined in that discussion. And
There's been a heavy debate on it.
yeah, there really has been. It's like I said before we went live, it's like this conversation that will never go away, that we're always having, and that um, everyone, has to kind of like chime in and put their 2 cents into it. And my video, which is called "This Is How We Save the Comic Industry, America, and the World," and it was this all like I've for the longest time I've wanted to kind of get down to the bottom of why the industry at least appears like it's struggling, or is struggling. I mean, people debate that. There's some people who say like it's always been this way, or there's ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting to kind of trace back and see just how the comic industry has changed over the years. But um I the more I thought about it, and the more that this conversation was going on, the more I realized that, in my opinion, I think like the only way that comics survive, and like Western comics survive, not necessarily manga, because that's a whole other beast and that's overshadowing a lot of Western comics right now. Um, is we need better comics. We need more good comics. We need to make the best comics we possibly can. And because if you're not trying to do that, if you're just trying to do a Netflix pitch, or you're just trying to, um, you know, make it day to day, make it to where you're just like barely scraping by and just trying to like, make the most average comics possible just to get by, the whole medium and the whole industry suffers, because those stories won't be remembered necessarily, or they won't be evergreen where people will keep purchasing them. And if you make good comics, that also helps comic shops, because more people will want to buy them and more people will get in the door of comic shops. And I think that more than anything, quality is what everyone should be striving for. And of course, there's a lot of different business models. There's a lot of different things we need to think about when it comes to distribution, and the relationship between the company and the customer, and the shops as a middleman, and all that kind of stuff that gets into the more logistical, technical side of things that I'm definitely no expert on. But I think at the end of the day, like, what gets people into shops? It's
See,
it,
see, I
it's
take a
good
different
comics.
I,
Yeah,
I take a
yeah,
very different approach, right?
yeah. I'm very
I,
interested. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I think in the last 15 years, over $7 billion has been pumped into comics. And I think we have been on a massive bull run, and not directly, but both directly and indirectly, because the MCU started in 2007, 2008. And that has led to a massive boom in comics and a
Yes.
massive boom in interest in comics, comic book properties, heroes. Because I hate to say this, and it's going to sound mean, nobody gave a damn about Iron Man until Iron Man the movie came out. Nobody
Mm.
cared about Iron Man in pop culture. Now people care about Iron Man. The
Yeah.
same thing with
Well,
Captain America. Same
if you
thing with.
remember, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like, at the
Feel free
time,
to.
yeah, I remember when Marvel Studios announced Iron Man, and like, all over everywhere, they said like Marvel's making a B movie character, like a B character movie, like this isn't Iron Man is not one of their top selling characters, one of their top selling, comics. And why are they doing an Iron Man movie? A lot of people didn't think, yeah, like you said, Iron Man was really nowhere to be celebrated. It's like you'd have to find, diehard Marvel fans who really loved him. And I think that's a really good point.
See, because what I think happened, and this is just my take, is that a lot of money's been pumped into it, and then people have cared, and then obviously you start with a huge amount of people at the very top of the funnel, and then you bring them down. And I think this is where this has gone wrong in a lot of ways, at least on the comic shop side, is that if you start with 10 million people, you will wind up, if you're lucky, with 10,000 at the
Yeah.
end of the sale. But guess what? If you have that every year, and then out of those 10,000, maybe you maintain only 10%. 15 years later, you have grown your base to 115,000, 20,000, 50,000 people. Obviously, I think we're talking about a much larger number than just 10 million at that point. And so I think what's happened though is that we've been on a massive bull run. And I think it's been very correlated with the United States economy. I mean, the US economy from 2008, starting really in 2009, went on a massive expansion for 128 months before COVID hit. And if we
Yeah.
look at media is usually 18 months behind sometimes on certain things. And so it actually looks extremely similar because right now we are in a roller coaster in our economy. And I think what's happened is that I think a lot of comic shops and a lot of people in comics have taken for granted the massive superhero boom that continued between DC, Marvel, and a bunch of other shows that came out. I mean, Happy came out. I think Pretty Deadly came out. All these
Yeah.
shows that were related to comics and in comics and were based on comics came out during this boom. And now I think people have said, we're done. And I think that's part of the problem here, at least on the comic book side, is that I think people are just saying, look, I'm done with superheroes. We've been doing this for 15 years. And
Yeah.
I don't even think the stories are bad. I just think that times change. And so I
Mhm.
don't know if there's a problem or if it's just that things have shifted and people say, look, I am tired of Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. But the problem is that comic shops in that process haven't hedged their bets because I speak to comic shops and 50% of their orders are Marvel and DC, and they
Yeah.
didn't hedge their bet. And so it's kind of like, and then this affects indie comics, in my opinion, at the very least, because now, great, if that comic shop can't sell Marvel and DC, and that's 50%, what's going to make them carry your book when they can't sell the other 50% and they're struggling with that? And I think
Yeah.
that's the whole problem. And then that affects your distribution chain. And even if you do 10,000 on Kickstarter, you're now not reaching that secondary or third terrier or tri-sherry or whatever it's called market outside of that. And that's my whole issue. And that's what I think's happened, where I think in the process, people haven't hedged their bet. And as somebody who runs a business selling comics, I always am looking to hedge my bets, and that's why I have to diversify. And so that's where I'm at. And it sounds weird, but I don't know if there's anything wrong or if it's just the
Mm.
fact that people just bet wrong. And maybe they
Yeah.
took for granted saying, cool, Marvel and DC are booming and all these movies are doing great. And then flip a switch, it's over. And you're screwed. Like,
That's
I don't know if that makes any
yeah.
sense, and I'm curious what you think because that's what I see.
No, I think you are definitely onto something because it's interesting to think of like the and it again it kind of goes back to quality too. It's and somewhat to my point is like with the amount of hype that the MCU has lost over the years, so many people have been fatigued or frustrated or just let down after Endgame in the last few years of where the MCU has gone. Um, I could see how that could be a direct correlation to people's disinterest in these characters now, or going to comic book shops. And I think that when you have that happening, because the MCU, it definitely brought people to comic shops. Maybe not as many as we think, or maybe not. It didn't. It wasn't sustainable. But you know, when you have this this hype and it's surrounding, and it starts to lose the steam and lose the quality, it really makes you wonder if those people will stick around anymore.
What's up, Ben?
Hey, Ben.
Hey, sorry I'm late. I completely forgot who was on tonight. So I
It's all right. You're,
apologize.
you're the reason why we're doing this. You're the reason why we're doing this because you, as I stated at the start of this, you have an opinion about all of this and how to save comic shops. And then Tyler Carpenter had a different opinion. And then everybody else has had 15 other opinions. And obviously, I mean, what I was explaining is that I don't know how much you caught of it, and I'm curious what you think. I'm sure everybody else does as well. Is that I think a lot of money's come into comics in the last 15 years. I think $70 billion plus more or less has come in, and pretty much I think a bunch of comic shops have taken advantage of it indirectly and directly. And then now, Marvel and DC aren't doing well because I think there's movie fatigue. And I think Nandor was touching upon that too, is that the MCU has brought in a lot of people, but I don't know if they've stuck around. And so I don't know what you feel about this, because obviously you've been doing this for what, 30, 40 years now?
It's been a while. So I'm sorry. You have to. Is this the subject matter you're talking about? Is what the comic industry is doing, or what?
So what we're talking about, kind of how to save the comic industry and save comic book shops in a lot of ways, because I think they're both tied together. I don't think you can necessarily save the comic industry without saving comic shops. I mean, that's what I think. I don't know if you can separate the two, because it's great that you can make comics on Kickstarter, but I do think that direct to consumer is really wonderful and great. But I do think you need to be in comic shops. I think you need to be in retail. I think you need to have secondary or third-tier distributions. I don't think that you can solely rely without, because I think cons can only go so far. I think Kickstarter can only go so far. And I think that the fact that they're even on Kickstarter, what is there, 330 projects? I mean, if you introduce 500 projects on Kickstarter, you're going to cut up further media, and further money out of that, and you're going to take more and more slices out of the pie.
Yeah, you're probably right. There is, I guess, I mean, you have to understand the history of comic books as a whole. I mean, when comic books were first starting out, there was the newsstand distribution model, and then that lasted for close to 50 years. Which we're doing just fine. And then the direct market was born back in the late 70s, and that changed the whole dynamic. Because there was suddenly a plethora of comic book stores that the publishers could now sell directly to the consumer without any returnability, and that was the big thing. Publishers hated returnability, because that was but the thing about returnability is that it told them what was selling and what wasn't selling. With the non-returnability, we can only go by what the retailers order, and not really knowing what's selling and what's not selling. So in a way, the old model of newsstand distribution was that it was a dog eat dog thing, that if you didn't do well on the newsstand, then you were destined to be canceled. But with the direct market, it wasn't such a clear delineation as far as that was concerned. And then when the direct market exploded, because there was an explosion there was a huge growth in comic book stores. And the thing about comic book stores back in the when they were first starting out was those were run by people who grew up with Marvel and DC. They didn't know any DC is ordering Marvel and DC. Any else like that. So it's similar to like the back in the 60s and 70s. Okay, when
Oh,
No, we lost Ben. We lost Ben.
we lost him. We were
I'm sure
getting a
Andre's gonna be
history
back.
lesson. We were
I
really
feel like-
important information. Yeah.
I'm sure he's going to be back in 1 second, and he's back.
Yeah.
He's back.
There we go.
Hopefully. I like how screen's just like blending right into the bottom of that. This is exactly what we want in the middle of our history lesson.
Okay, there you go.
You're back. You're back in the middle of the history lesson.
Okay. So, the thing about it is that they were building up their own industry. Now, it was fine because that was all there was available. Marvel and DC were the big dogs on campus. There was nothing else really to compete with them. Then it's just the same like the auto industry. They just thought, we're Ford and Chevy and whatever. People are going to buy our cars. And then when
Yeah.
foreign cars start to come in, like the Japanese, with the cheaper, smaller models, and people just thought of them as just nothing. But then they started to grow, and people started to like them. Because they were higher quality, cheaper price, and people liked them. But they didn't do anything to change their market to to um, to adapt to the changing conditions. And comics are a lot the same way. Of course, when the 80s came and the 90s came and people were selling millions of copies of comics. People may poo-poo the 90s, but man, they were selling lots of comics. And when the money became, such a temptation, Marvel decided to get into the direct market distribution. They decided that they were, I won't say the word arrogant, but sort of, they had the hubris of thinking that they could distribute comics themselves. And boy, that was a big mistake. They bought Heroes World and they tried to do comic distribution, and it was a big, huge failure. And they had to go back to, going to the regular distributors. But the problem was that because Marvel did that, okay, Diamond instigated the exclusive
Right.
contract, and that killed the entire direct market. Nothing against Diamond. Diamond was very clever about doing that, and they became a monopoly, effectively a monopoly. Okay, so anything about monopolies, okay, if they control the entire industry, then what are you going to do? Go someplace else? No,
Right.
you
Right.
can't go anywhere else. Okay, so when you have the monopoly, there's no incentive to change. There's no incentive to adapt. So when and that's what really drove the comic, and it just was a slow decline from there on. Now, you mentioned crowdfunding and Kickstarter. That is a game changer. It is, because now creators can go to direct to consumer, and that's where it allows them to be able to create things based strictly on supply and demand. You can, if someone likes your project, they'll give you money in exchange for what you're offering. And while that's not ideal for the growth of the industry as a whole, it does allow creators to become self-sustaining if they create a product that they like. So at least they're not beholden to the vagaries of working for a publisher. Because if you're working for a publisher, okay, you're at the whim of that publisher. Okay, he pays you a pay, and you don't own anything if you work for a publisher. I mean, imagine if, for instance, that the guy who created the Wolverine, Len Wein, and was it Len Wein and Herb Trimpe, okay, had gotten even a small percentage of the royalty on Wolverine, they would all be multimillionaires right now.
Yeah.
Okay, instead of having to beg people, to help them, pay their mortgage. It's a very sad when a publisher can make billions off something you've created and you don't see a dime. Okay, so now creators have come to the conclusion that why should I, as a creator, give anything of value to a publisher? Okay, I mean, why should I give them the next $1 billion idea when
Yeah.
I can benefit from that? So so the big two, instead of trying to, what the big two should really do is says, look, we're going to give you skin in the game. Okay, you've created something really good for us, and we'll give you a cut of the action. But unfortunately, the people who are running comic books now are not comic book people. Okay, they don't understand, what creators have to go through to create new things, that people will like. And unfortunately, that's what's causing a lot of the problems that are going on in the comic book industry. They have no first of all, they're owned by huge corporations that have almost an endless supply of cash. So what's it to them? Okay, what's incentivizing to them to put anything in the comic industry, because they're a drop in the bucket as far as they're concerned. Okay, Warner Brothers could stop publishing comics with DC tomorrow, and they wouldn't bat an eye. Okay, they would just say, why are we even bothering with DC? Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, we're spending all this money on DC. Okay, when we could just shut the publishing venture down, license our product and let other people do Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, and we just collect a licensing fee. I mean, that's their way of thinking. And I'm surprised that I'll bet you there's some corporate executive thinking that right now. Thinking they're crunching the numbers, and they're thinking, why are we even bothering publishing? I mean, there's a reason why Walt Disney doesn't do their own publishing. They tried it for a little while in the 90s, and it's failed spectacularly. Okay, so they've learned the lesson that publishing comics is a losing proposition for them. It costs too much, and there's not enough return. Now, with the advent of manga, okay, which came out of nowhere, really, manga's been around for a long time. It started in the mid '90s. I mean, the early '90s, and it's always been sort of a niche thing. But comic book stores didn't foster that. They didn't say, hey, this manga thing might be something that we can take it, to help build the industry. But they didn't look at it that way. They thought it was just some niche thing, that a few, quote unquote, manga enthusiasts would get would buy. But now, look at it now. It's outselling every American comic out there right now. And it's proving the fact that if you don't have a good product, you're not going to sell. People want good product. It has to be fundamentally come down to that. You have to create good product. If you create a good product, people will buy it. And some people say, "Oh, comics are so expensive, so expensive." Well, yeah, but relatively speaking, they're not any more expensive than price wise than a comic book back in the 80s and 90s, in the 50s. If you go by inflation. In fact, comics right now, if you go by inflation, it should be around $9 or $10 a book. So in a way, we're trying to keep the comic prices as low as possible, in relation to the actual rate of inflation. So it's still a good value, I think, because the one thing about comics is that you own it. Okay, you go to a movie, you spend 2 hours, you watch it, and then when you come out with an experience, and that's it. You don't take the movie with you. The only thing you take with, as far as the movie is concerned, is the memory of the movie. Comics are things you can hold and can actually appreciate in value if you just hold on to it. You take care of it. You pass it on to your friends or to your family or whoever. So at least that's something physical. I mean, there's a lot to be said about the digital thing, but to me, physical, when you can hold something, has way more value than anything digital. So because it's physical, you can hold it. But as far as saving the industry is concerned, I don't know. When you say you're saving the industry, what does that really mean? Okay, are you saying that the industry is such dire straits that it's in danger of collapsing totally and disappearing? You see, I don't believe that.
See, I'll clarify my position. So I think that there's two sides to this. So I don't think creation in comics is dead at all, right? I don't think that's what the issue is. I mean, I think there is a position with comic shops in particular of potentially saving them or addressing them or handling them. But I also think that they've kind of dug their own bed to some degree because, as I stated, for 15 years, we had a lot of money being pumped in directly and indirectly because of the MCU, all these movies, all this prop up stuff. And you start with a big funnel and then you wind up with, a fan base that has some interest. And I think they just bet wrong because I think because I run a business and I sell books. And so I used to sell obviously a lot of a particular book. And then in the process, I started changing and diversifying. So I think what's happened with a bunch of comic shops is that their revenue has come straight out of Marvel and DC is 50%. And now that Marvel and DC are a disaster, and if that's 50% of your revenue and that's selling you 3 grand and now that's not moving, I mean, you kind of didn't diversify your position when times were good and you were making 10 grand every single month on Marvel and DC and your rent was 2 grand and it cost you three, you had a profit of 5 grand. You should have been diversifying your merch. So I think that's part of the issue here is that for 15 years, all these comic shops haven't been diversifying and they're saying, oh, this bull train is going to continue indefinitely. And now they're realizing really quickly that, hey, people are exhausted from superheroes. They're tired of that. And that, the Marvel DC train, and I think it'll come back eventually. I really do. But I don't think it might not come around for 5 years. And so now you have an issue where is that the issue? Because to me, I think, everybody wants to be in comic shops. I think that's just a secondary, a third terry. And it's because there's plenty of people who don't want to go on crowdfunding. And there's plenty of problems that are emerging on crowdfunding right now. That is definitely a deterrent for me in some regard. So I think that's part of the issue is that, I think comic shops are a vital part of this industry. I do. And so,
Sure.
that's one side of it. But I don't think on creation per se, because I think, there's webtoons, there's a million ways how to create something. And so that's just my view is that I think that there's parts of the industry that definitely need saving, but also, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, on Kickstarter alone, there's plenty of great projects and there's plenty of really bad ones. And I mean, I don't want to be a gatekeeper, but maybe there should be gatekeeping. I mean, Zoop is a good example where Zoop is a very curated content area where it goes through a ring and there's plenty of people who have not fulfilled on Kickstarter, and that's also a problem. So, I mean, there are certain parts where I feel that there does need to be maybe not saving might not be the position, but correction might be a better word.
Well, fundamentally, I sort of agree with some of the points you've made. However, I think that we do part a little bit is that, unless, comic book stores are just like any other business. You have to run it like a good business. And comic book stores that will survive are the ones who can willingly adapt. Okay, if they're not selling enough back issues, I mean, they're not selling enough new issues to justify carrying new issues. They're going to swing into something else if they want to stay afloat. They'll carry Magic trading cards, they'll carry games, they'll carry toys, they'll carry other things to keep them afloat.
Pop figures, yeah.
Yeah, Funko figures. They'll carry manga.
Yeah.
Okay, the thing is that it's about you being able to adapt to the market. Now, the fact of the matter is, Marvel and DC, in their in their hubris, is that they don't care. Okay, it comes down simply as that. People have been telling them for years that the content they're producing is losing them readers. Okay, people are no longer care about what they're producing. Yes, they're still selling, but they're selling at numbers that would have gotten books canceled 30 years ago. Okay, it's just a simple fact.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think again, adapting and diversifying. It's like there, depending on what kind of comic shop you are, too. Because there are so many different kinds of shops where you have the one shop that they mostly, get all their money from back issues, or maybe it is new issues, or maybe if and those particular shops too, maybe they've never carried manga before, and so they don't have the expertise to know what to carry, what people necessarily want, and they have to.
Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Did I lose you?
I can still hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
No, I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me, Ben, or no?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, what about me?
The thing about it is that, You see, I have some connection issues here.
Okay, hear you still.
Okay, sorry, I
Yeah, you're
lost you
good.
there.
You're good now.
Okay, yeah. I mean, like I was telling previously, Marvel and DC, they don't care. Okay, people have been telling them for years, especially their base audience, is that what you're doing is not working. Okay, you need to go back to your basics. You need to go back to what made you guys as popular as you are. But they're chasing a audience that it does not buy comics. Okay, they don't buy comics. You have to give people a reason to go to a comic book store every week to pick up comics. Okay, you have to give them a quality product that will justify their time and their travel and their and their money to go there to pick up the latest book. And right now I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing people are constantly saying that this book is just not any good.
Let's actually talk about that though, because if Marvel and DC are quote unquote failing and it's not good, and then you have all this content that you were touching upon with Kickstarter and crowdfunding of producing really good books, but those people they could afford to print books, but they can't afford to print in mass quantities and they can't really break. And I know that you obviously, Antarctic Press, and being the face of it to some degree, are really helping to break that a little bit. But there's plenty of people who really can only print 200 copies, and they are really living hand to mouth on this. And this is where I think this really gets complicated with the industry, is because if we have really good products being produced on crowdfunding, but they can't get distribution and they can't get into a comic shop, or they can't even breach that wall, I mean, isn't that a big problem in the industry? And that means that, because if the base readership hates DC and Marvel, thinks that they're failing, they like books on crowdfunding, but a bunch of people also don't want to use crowdfunding, or that even a crowdfunder can't even handle a mass quantity order. I mean, I don't know how many crowdfunders and Kickstarters could handle a 5,000 person campaign or a $20,000 campaign. I don't think the infrastructure is there. I think there are very few people who can do that right now effectively without losing their shirt. And this is where I think the industry is at a real crossroads and an inflection point, is that it's like somebody has a great product, but their breaking point is 10,000 on Kickstarter before their infrastructure starts losing its shit. And then their book gets delayed by 6 months because they have no idea how to fix the problem, because they've never dealt with that volume. And like that's where I find that the industry, quote unquote, needs saving, is that I don't even know if it's a common problem as much as it's an economic problem and an infrastructure problem.
I mean, it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the industry itself hasn't really learned anything from its past mistakes. Okay, first of all, it used to be Marvel and DC were producing product people wanted. Okay, and that's what made them their sales. They were producing a lot, and they were producing regular, steady entertainment. Okay, and they were appealing to their, their readership. Now, Marvel and DC used to do this, but they've abandoned it for some reason. Well, they probably abandoned it because they figured there was no market for it. But they used to do horror comics. They used to do Western comics. They used to do romance comics. They used to do kid-oriented comics. They used to do a huge swath of different genres to appeal to as wide a audience as they possibly could. Now all their focus is on superhero comics. And when they don't do good superhero comics and don't appeal to their base, then what do they have left? Okay. What do they really have left? Even DC tried to revive the Vertigo line, and that flopped spectacularly. Okay. Another thing is that the industry itself is still obsessed with exclusives. Okay. You have your Lunar, you have your, Penguin, you have your Diamond. They're all still, not Diamond anymore, but they're still under the thing with exclusives. Why is that? It makes no sense. Okay, exclusivity will kill, if anything, will kill the industry. If you want to read as wide an audience as possible, you've got to have as many distributors that you possibly can get. Okay, because that is your focal point, is to try to get your stuff out to as many people as possible. And the thing is, they're not doing that. Almost seems like they just want to be this exclusive club, that only a few people can get into, and it's something that I think it's very detrimental to the overall industry. And I've always I've always said that exclusivity will kill the industry. Okay, Diamond doesn't play that game. I mean, not Diamond. Manga doesn't play that game. Okay, they want to get their stuff as wide an audience as possible. Why do you think Viz and all those other manga publishers are not exclusive? Okay, none of their stuff is exclusive. They try to get their product into as many store shelves as they possibly can. And that's another thing, is that comic industry killed themselves by abandoning the newsstand model. Okay, when they abandoned newsstand, okay, they pretty much shot themselves in the foot, because now they no longer have the now I know they try to expand back into newsstand, but it's almost like a half-hearted attempt. They didn't really go all in, when they should have. But it may be too late now. Who knows? If I would not be surprised if manga overtakes the entire, takes a huge lion's share, and then the comic book stores will have to ask themselves, well, what, I'll have to. They can't really compete with the manga, because it's the big box stores can sell it for cheaper. So what do they have left? Okay, so that's where indie comics have to come in to fill that vacuum. Okay, if Marvel and DC start to go down, it's going to leave a vacuum. Okay, so it's up to indie publishers and creators to create something that will fill that vacuum. I mean, and hopefully someday some publisher will do that. I don't think the comic industry is going to die out. It's going to be around for a long time. Going to be, is be just to and a huge. Why we're not doing that now? You mentioned, is crowdfunding? Yes, crowdfunding is sort of like, to me, as sort of a test bed. It's sort of like a capitalism in its purest form. You have an idea, okay, you want to bring it out. You don't have the money to do it yourself, so you offer that idea on crowdfunding and see if you can interest enough people to give you money to fulfill your idea. If your idea fails, then you have to look at yourself and say, well, why did my idea fail? Was this something I did? Was it the way I presented it? But if you succeed, then that's the audience telling you, hey, we like your idea. We want you to complete it. And then it's up to you to decide to continue it, or to stop where you are.
I don't know if you have anything to respond to that, Nandor.
Well, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point, and I think that I wonder how many.
Like, for instance, I'm sure you're filled of.
We got some delay there.
Hey, we got a slight delay from Ben.
Is it on my end?
It's always my fault. It's always my fault. So we can just. I'm more than happy to
take responsibility. I was just going to say,
probably that crappy internet.
I was going to say, it makes me wonder how many crowdfunding creators think about getting their books into stores. Like, because I know there's some people that are probably, if they do well on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or wherever, um, are they really concerned, or do they want to put in the effort to get their books into shops? I mean, I've always wanted that. That's like been a dream of mine, is like get my books into comic book stores and get my books in front of people and get my books um as far and wide as I can possibly get them, because that's exciting to me. And like, I mean, that's how I discover comics. I go to my local comic book shop and I see what's new and I see what's out there. And I'm not always looking on Kickstarter and Indiegogo all the time, and I want to support my local businesses. I love local bookstores. I love local comic book shops. I believe like small businesses are like the heart and soul of a community in a lot of respects. And it's like if we lose them, all we have are the big corporations and the big box stores, and the monopolies like Ben was talking about. And um so that would be an interesting conversation I'd like to have with like other creators, is like also like, are you concerned with that? Do you care about getting your book in shops? Like, do you want to do that? Because personally, for me, it's like that's a huge goal of mine, and I have all my books in every local shop in my area as much as possible, bookstores and comic book stores. And I just do that on my own time. I talk with managers, I talk with owners, and I hit the street and and get it out there, and it's great that way. But when it comes to um how crowdfunding relates, it also makes me wonder, is in some like twisted way, it's almost like, are people no longer going to comic book shops because of crowdfunding? So in some way it's like crowdfunding, and it like, not necessarily that crowdfunding is hurting comic book shops, because if the comics themselves in comic book shops were better quality, then people would still be going to both, and they would be looking for comics in shops as well as crowdfunding. But the convenience of, we live in the Amazon age of like convenience, in the fast food world of like, oh, I could just order it online and they'll just ship it to me. Or I can just do everything online, do everything digitally. And there's so comic book stores have so many uphill battles, and they've been facing these uphill battles for so long, especially in this digital age. It's like, not only do they have to compete with that in a sense, even though comics have the physical collectability that regular books do not, there's still that convenience aspect too. And I think, it's not only the digital thing, but also the fact that, quality for a lot of people has dropped. And also the fact that, the economy, everyone's been hurting. It's like, just like, you could just like name a list, it's just like this long
The
list of
perfect
things.
storm might be a good way to say it.
Yeah. It just feels like everything is converging. And and who's suffering? Comic book shops are suffering. And readers are suffering
Hmm,
because they
I
don't
could
want to see they don't want to see their comic book store
so
close.
for
Yeah.
me, I run an eBay business and I sell books. Do you
Yeah.
know how complicated it is when I reach out to them and say, "Hey, you have an indie book, I would like to sell your book." 50% of the time I get no response from anybody. I'm like, "Look, I would like to buy 20 of your books. Can we talk?" 50% of the time I get no response. I get no interaction on Kickstarter. And then after I approach people, if I get a response, then we start talking about price. And then once we get into price, then we were talking about numbers. And I'm like, great, you're selling your book for 20 bucks. What do you want to sell it to me for? And like, I want to sell it to you for 20 bucks. And I'm like, that's not how this works. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Right.
and like, fine, I'll sell it to you for 15. I'm like, again, this is not how this works. And then what winds up happening is that then if I reach out to 30 people, I'm already cut down to 15. Out of those 15, I'm then cut down to 7. Out of those 7, I get cut down to 3. So in order for me to do business and pick up an indie book, I'm going from 30 down to 3. And it's like the industry, and I'm an eBay store, and I get that I'm a little untraditional per se, and I'm not a box store, I'm not a brick and mortar store. But at the same time, it's like we're getting a little funky here, guys. I mean, I'm coming to Whatnot. I want to sell your books. Like,
Right.
and I think this is where the industry's gone haywire, is that great if there's a vacuum that's being created and people want better product and they like a story and it worked on Kickstarter and I want to buy some of your books, and then you make it really difficult. I mean, and if you're a comic store and you make it difficult to buy your book, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this isn't, I mean, it's just logical. The more difficult you make business for me, the harder it is for me to pick up your product. And
Yeah.
so it's like, if I was to approach you right now and you were really difficult and your price point was way off and it wasn't even in a ballpark, if we're debating between $10 and $12, we're in the same neighborhood. But if I'm looking to buy your book for $12 and you're trying to sell it to me for 25, we're not even in the same city.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think this is where the industry's gone wrong, is that you have all these outside positions where legitly somebody could shoot. Like, I reach out, I think in the last 6 months, I think I reached out to 50 people. I got like 10 responses. It's horrific. It's horrific. And I'm trying to make money. You're trying to make money, and I don't understand. And this is where we're going. How to save the industry, how to save comic shops. It's like, I just think there's some miscommunication on how to do business. And that's just what I think, because I'm living it every day. And then after a while, I say, fine, I'll go the exclusive route. I will go with the Mount Olympuses and the $20, $30, $50 exclusive books, because at least I can do business and get a $10 discount on those books all day. And that's where I'm at. And so now I am not, in the space anymore in that regard, where I've been kicked out, not by choice. So I mean, that's just my personal experience.
Well, I mean, I can understand. I can understand that the sentiment. I mean, yes, things are not good economically at the moment. I mean, but I don't know how long you've been around, but I've been around long enough to see several recessions, and several downturns in the industry, but and we somehow managed to survive it. The thing about it, everything is cyclical. Things go up and things go down. Things
Yeah.
go up,
Peaks and
things go
valleys.
down.
Yeah.
It just depends on how you're able to weather the storm. It's just like right now we're in a big storm. Okay, are you taking on water? Are you able to bail enough water out to keep you afloat? And sometimes you have to make the hard choices. Sometimes you have to make the decisions that may be difficult, but if it saves from drowning, then you should do whatever you can to do that. If you want to survive. Now, the thing about what you mentioned, as a creator, is that you have total control over that. There are ways to maximize your ability to get your stuff out there. Now, there are a lot to be said about getting your stuff in the comic stores. I mean, that's it. The good thing about comic stores is that even though your book may not be picked up right away, it's there on the shelf where hundreds of potential buyers will have looked at it,
Yeah.
and say, wow, that's a pretty interesting book, or flip through it, and then maybe there's a chance that he'll actually buy it. The thing about crowdfunding is that's a direct consumer thing. Nobody will see that book other than the person who bought that book. That is it. Now he may share it with somebody else, but the chances are that the person who bought it is the only one who's going to see it. So, but that's fine if that keeps you afloat. If that makes you the money to continue to maintain producing product, then there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's absolutely acceptable to go ahead and do that. If that means you can keep producing product. I mean, look at it this way. Every single thing you do is yours to keep forever. Okay, so you do 1 issue, 2 issue, 3 issue, and you could use that over and over and over again. Okay, I mean, there's a reason why Marvel and DC keep reprinting
Yeah.
stuff they've done 30, 40, 50 years ago, because they can still make money on it. And once you've done the product, you own it forever. And I guarantee you, there'll be people who have never heard of it before who will want to try it for the first time. So that's the one advantage of being a creator who can keep creating. And if Kickstarter keeps you afloat, okay, then you should take advantage of it by all means. But you also should not abandon any other distribution model that comes along. See, that's the one thing I don't understand. And this is something Hollywood is something I don't get. They had a great distribution model. First in the theaters, then on physical media, then on TV and cable. It worked great. People were making great money. But when they abandoned that traditional model, that's when things hit the fan. And now everyone's losing money left and right. Because their greed, decided to blind them to what worked. And unfortunately, that's something that I think that they're going to go back to doing that traditional model, because they realize, oh, wow, we screwed up. It worked so great before, this is not working. We're all losing money. And the same thing with anything is that I never understood the reason why you would abandon something that worked so well in the past. Now that things are different, I love crowdfunding because it allows creators such as ourselves, to be able to create something without having to go through the gatekeepers of publishers. It used to be you had to go through publishers to get anything out there. Now you don't have to do that. You can bypass them altogether. But the good thing about that also is that you can go back with the same product and offer it to a publisher, and see if they'll pick it up. And you've already done the work. You've already been paid. You already got the money. So if the publisher picks up your book, then that's just extra money for you, that you don't have to put into it. You let the publisher take care of that for you, and pay you for that. So
Yeah, and then you have the extra backing of saying this actually worked. Like, people want this product, and when you show the publisher those numbers, and be like, oh, like it just makes the conversation that much more smoother and easier. It's an easier pitch, because you can be like, this funded this, so many people backed it. This is like a great product that people actually want and that people will read and come back for. And
yeah, it's less
that's
risk for the publisher, because
yeah.
you'll have a
Yeah.
track record. He'll know right away that the book is done, so you're not going to be late. So
Right. Yeah.
and that if it turns out to be and it's a very low risk to the publisher. The work is already done. If it sells great, then you make some money. If it doesn't, well, no big deal. I mean,
Right.
it's just that's to me that's going to be the new dynamic. The thing about it is that Marvel and DC still own whatever you create. Okay, that's something that's got to have to change eventually.
Right.
You got to give creators skin in the game. If you don't give them skin in the game, they're not going to give you their best work, and they're not going to
Right.
create anything new. So it's why do you think that they're doing so many spin-offs of their already established characters? Spider Boy, Silk, Spider-Man. I mean, what was the last really new character that they've introduced in the last 10 years?
Yeah.
What new character have they actually introduced? Back in the day, they were introducing new characters all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
That's how you got your Ghost Rider. That's how you got your Wolverine. That's how you got your, X-Men. All those were all new characters from the ground up. I mean, when was the last time you saw a wholly original new character from Marvel or DC that just was a breakout hit?
Right. Yeah. I
It
mean,
that's
the last character that like comes to mind, that's like a somewhat new character, didn't do huge numbers, but like the Sentry, from Marvel. Like I remember when they, brought him into the fold, it was like, who's this like Superman analog? It is basically like a Superman character, but at the same time, it was really interesting to see that in the think he appeared in like the early 2000s, but you don't see that at all anymore, and they are just derivative characters of their main characters. And
Yeah.
I- you
As a
know,
creator, why would I? Why would I
yeah,
give up something that is to a brilliant character in my estimation? Why should I give them to Marvel and DC? I'm not going to lose it. I mean, like I
hmm
said, if look at all those brilliant characters that come down the pipe, that people have got zero, nothing for them. I mean,
right,
Ghost Rider, X-Men, Wolverine, all those characters that have made the companies millions of dollars, and yet the creators die in poverty.
yeah.
It's not fair. So why, as a creator, should I give them anything of any worth? To be, when I'm just going to lose it.
Yeah, and I mean that goes like into that conversation of, is that why, it makes me ask the question, is that why so many of these Marvel and DC books, the quality has dropped so much, because the creators just don't have the incentive, to put their best foot forward with these stories and with these books, because it's like, well, I'm not going to make that much money off of this anyways, and I'm just trying to get by, or trying to, do what I can with what I have. There was such a mass exodus of creators, like around like 2012, 2015, of like, they all went to indie books, they all went to Image, they all went to um their own creator owned work, and it's all because there's no money at Marvel and DC for them to put all of
Well,
their creativity, and their ideas into those
well,
properties.
there is value in working for Marvel and DC. I would tell you the thing about working for Marvel and DC is a steady paycheck. Okay, that's the
Yeah.
thing. That's the one big advantage they have. Plus, you get to work with world famous IPs.
Yeah,
So you
totally.
just you
It's
establish
also
yourself working on something that's well known. Okay, and then you make a name for yourself, and then when people know who you are, that's when you leave.
That's when you
You know,
bail. Yeah.
and do something else. It
let's
did introduce that character you've always wanted to introduce.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll just say it. Let's look at this. 2012 was Scott Snyder, top of the comic industry in a lot of ways. With
Mhm.
Batman, had a fantastic run, had a fantastic exit run, and he built a name for himself over
Yeah.
years. And I love Scott, and I've had very good interactions. I thought some of his Batman stuff was some of the best writing he's ever done. I thought The Court of the Owls was brilliant. I really did. I thought Death in the Family was great. I thought it was a very good play. I thought that was some of the best Batman that's come out in the last 20 years. That I get that that's a debate. That's fine, but the point is that he left, I think, also when he was at the top of his game, knowing that if he got into the Indies, he was on a rocket. And
Yeah.
so I don't have a problem with people wanting to work for Marvel, putting in the grind, getting to build their name, getting to build their steps in and using it as a stepping stone, because for a bunch of people it's worked.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and there's nothing wrong from a business argument. I've had this discussion with WWE, with NXT. There are plenty of people who have gone to NXT for 3 years, hated it a year and a half, were under contract for 3 years, but they learned from Shawn Michaels, they learned from William Regal, they learned from Triple H, they've learned from a bunch of the top people in the wrestling world, and then they go out on the indies and they're better wrestlers because of it. And they
Yeah.
have more knowledge. And I'm not saying Marvel or DC are like NXT by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're a far cry from it right now. But I think the premise and the idea is that if I can work for a company for 3 years, get major mentorship, and then go out on my own and have those skills, why wouldn't I take less of a paycheck to make more money in the end? And that's what I think a lot of mass exodus happened in
Yeah.
2012, 2015, is that I think it was just a stepping stone, and they abandoned ship after they took the treasure off the ship.
Right. They took it with them.
Yeah.
That's what I think happened. That's what I think's happened, and
Yeah.
that's just
Well,
my
Yeah, and I think the problem is, like, shouldn't Marvel and DC's goal be to keep those people there? Like, wouldn't they want to keep them there? But maybe they
no, it's
don't.
not
Maybe
their
you're
goal. their goal is to make money. Okay, they don't give a rip about any creators. I will tell you
Right.
this honestly. Okay, don't give a rat's ass about any of the creators. They don't care how famous you are.
Hmm.
Okay, the biggest problem they have is talent retention and talent creation. Okay, the thing about it is they're not cultivating the next generation of new talent. Okay,
Mm.
they go by they they hire their talent through agents now. There used to be back in the day, back in my day, back in the day,
They'd
editors
scout
would
you out,
actually go to
right?
they would actually
Yeah.
physically go out to conventions, look at people's portfolios, okay, and give their honest criticism about what they saw. And if they saw a talent that was had a potential, they would give them low assignments. Okay, yeah, you could do a Marvel Presents backup story.
Hmm.
Okay,
Right.
and then they that's where they got their skill. They would say okay, and that's where they got their entry point. And they if and editors, that's the one thing they don't have anymore is that editors used to be in charge of certain books, and they would have their little fiefdom where they would just find the talent they needed to produce the books that they wanted. Okay, and then they would cultivate that talent. They would build it. They would, make sure that that talent was producing the best possible work that they possibly could do. And that's how you build up that readership. Now it's all willy nilly. Editors don't mean anything now at Marvel or DC. There's nobody. It's all run by corporate. They don't. They're run by
Yeah.
people who are not comic book people. Okay,
Right.
they when you're hiring people because through an agency, okay, you're not building any new talent. You're not
Hmm.
cultivating that next crop of talent that is going to carry your company into the future. So
Yeah.
that's why they're on a slow downward slide to almost eventual uh, uh, um, you know they're going to slow slide to self deletion basically.
Mm.
Sooner or later, and I guarantee this is going to happen. I don't know when, but it's going to happen. The Marvel and DC will cease publishing. Okay, they're
Mm.
just going to stop
Yeah.
publishing. There's no reason for them to publish anymore. They're going to look at the numbers and say, why the hell are we doing new material when we've got 90 years worth of stuff that we can reprint all day long. And
Yeah.
it
That's
would make, or
interesting.
we could
Yeah.
just license it out. He said, hey, you want to license Superman or Batman? Just pay us this
Yeah.
number of dollars and you can have at do your Wonder Woman comic or whatever. We don't want the headache. I mean, so, but if that's the case, then that's the comic industry will still be there. It just will be a different animal. You know.
Yeah.
So I know that I think Nandor has to get out of here in a few
I
minutes.
do. I
But,
do.
but,
Yeah.
but I do want to end on one important question. And I think it's for both of you. And I don't know who wants to go first, but obviously, if you were in charge of Marvel, DC, and a bunch of the major comic companies, what would you do to facilitate, to attempt to, I guess, issue a rebirth or get it to a healthier place? Because I don't know if, Marvel, DC, and obviously they play a major role right now in comic shops, is the healthiest it's ever been. I don't think it is. I think that's a safe assumption. And also, I don't think comics in general are healthy, and not because it's a creativity problem. I think it's every other problem is the issue right now in comics beyond creativity. I think creativity is the least of everybody's problem right now in comics. So that's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but obviously that's what I view. But I don't know who wants to go first because obviously I have my opinions where I would burn the whole thing down. Just burn it down, rebirth it, let everybody start from scratch. And
Right.
I think it'd be cheaper in the long run, but I would short the whole thing first. This way I get my little extra money on it. But anyway, jokes aside, I don't know who wants to go first on that.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. Sure. Yeah. I'll go ahead. If I was in charge, in this theoretical vision or possibility here, I would find every way I could to of course, incentivize creators, people who have left Marvel and DC to their own indie books, figure out ways to bring them back, to get those big names that have left that are doing their own thing to come back. And I think we need to look at royalties, we need to look at um, ways that, you know, we let these creators create and tell the stories that they want to tell and have those honest conversations as much as possible about um, what how it can benefit them, and not and look at how much page rates are. Page rates are a huge conversation about like what Marvel and DC artists and writers are getting paid, how that's changed over the years. Like I said, royalties. I would find every way, because money speaks. It's like if you put wave around the right amount, like it'll bring people to their door, and
I can be bought for a certain amount of money, no problem.
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
invest.
right. And I think, I don't know if they have the money to spare. They probably don't. I don't know, but like it, I think that's the way you bring in the people that have left, or you keep them, and if corporate could, they never really look out for the little guy at all. But like if you could have that balance and that relationship as much as possible with the creator and the company, then that way you wouldn't have people like Scott Snyder feel like they have to leave and they have to build their own kingdom, and things like that. I think that's a conversation that is worth having. And so I would do that. And um, I find what DC is doing right now interesting with their smaller size graphic novels, more like trade paperback size. Like finding ways to change the format for comics is a really interesting idea. I don't know. That remains to be seen on how well it does, but I think that um, that could be the first step into a really interesting direction for them, and looking at, okay, how do we reformat these books for manga readers, like people that enjoy that. I don't know if how much cross pollination, or how many people will flock to that, how many manga readers will flock to that, but I think that looking at different methods of publication and formatting your books in that way is a really interesting idea. Um, I agree with Ben that like I don't necessarily think that comics are too expensive. I think that they certainly can be depending on the page count, but like for the most part, I don't find that to be an issue. So I think that if anything, it could be drop the quantity of titles and focus on the quality of titles, and focus on how much we can actually bring to these universes that again make things matter again, which is really important. A lot of people feel like the stories just don't have any consequences, don't have any stakes, and make these stories matter again, where people actually care about what is happening with the characters, and having um, the universes actually feel like they're communicating with each other. Have the creators like communicate with each other, and have the universes have that continuity, which is something that Marvel and DC have struggled with for so long, with so many relaunches. And I don't like number one sell, and they have collectability and all of that, but at the end of the day, like all the relaunches and all that stuff, just it never lasts, because eventually you'll get to issue 25 or 50 or 75 or whatever, and you'll have to redo it again. And I think um, DC with their Black Label is a really great creative space for characters, and like doing Elseworld stories, doing more stories that don't necessarily affect continuity. I think is the way to go, because you can really um, bring creators in that want to do different things with these characters, and do things that, okay, maybe they're afraid of that actually happening in continuity, like with what Marvel's about to do with the Ultimate Universe with Jonathan Hickman, and making Spider-Man actually married again and with kids. Like, is that ever going to happen in the mainline Marvel universe? Maybe not, but it's gotten a lot of readers excited, and that's going to bring a lot of people back to Spider-Man that have haven't read Spider-Man in years. So I think looking at how they can take advantage of all those different avenues would really benefit them.
Interesting.
Yeah, what would you do, Ben? That's what everybody wants to know because what would you do
All
if you
right. Well,
were over?
okay.
Would you
Well,
just
I mean,
make
those are
characters?
all good suggestions. But I would do something a little slightly differently. If I was in charge of either one of the comics industry, Marvel, this is what I was. This is the first thing I would do. Yeah, fundamentally, I think we have a distribution problem. Okay, first of all, I would make myself emperor in chief of the whole company. Okay, then I would find really qualified editors and say, look, you're in charge of the Spider-Man line, you're in charge of the X-Men line, you're in charge of the Avengers line, and you're in charge of everything else. Okay, so I would make sure that I would get qualified editors and make sure that you'll be in charge of those titles. Okay, so it's up to you to find talent. Next thing I would do is get rid of any unwanted books. Okay, that are not go back to legacy numbering. Okay, say, okay, all of this crap needs to end now. Okay, you just gotta you're gonna have one Spider-Man title, gonna have one X-Men title, gonna have one
Mm,
Avengers title, gonna have one title. That's is it. Okay, it's up to you to make that title sell. If you don't sell, you're fired. Okay. Second thing I would do is uh, uh, to go back to finding new talent. Okay, bring back anthologies, your Marvel Presents, your Marvel Showcases, your Marvel whatever, and say bring back anthologies. This is the starter level for new talent. Okay, and then we have different tiers as far as pay is concerned. You're starting off, it's just like working at McDonald's. You start off with a little minimum wage thing, and you work your way up. Okay, you prove yourselves that you're reliable, that you're talented, you're easy to work with, that I could depend on you. Then you work your way up. Then you can get the bigger titles. Then you bring more into yes. And then what I would do is I would have a creator uh, ownership program. Okay, you create a new character. Okay, every time we use that character, you'll get a royalty. Okay,
mhm,
every time it appears, like let's say you do like Turtle Man. Okay, and he appears in Daredevil or he appears in Spider-Man. Every time he appears, we use that character. You get a royalty. Okay, so that's and if it becomes a movie, you get this, and all that kind of stuff. So they have a skin in the game. Then you haven't realized that they'll start creating new different things. And the next thing I would do is go back to spinner racks. Now, a lot of people have been poo-pooing me on this, but hear me out. Okay, if you want to get the next generation of readers, you've got to expose them to comics. So this is what I would do. I would do a comic book store first policy. Comic book stores get priority. Okay, they'll get a unique cover. They'll get and they get it first. Okay, then we do a second printing and distribute them to newsstands. Like it'll come out a month later. Okay, and then they'll appear on newsstands. So comic stores get the first crack at anything new. Newsstands get a crack at anything after that. Okay, and then after that, then I would also do a large number of $1 reprint books. Okay, just dirt cheap comic books that we could just get out there, print them as cheaply on tissue paper as possible. Because we want the. I will guarantee you put a spinner rack where there's a high traffic area, it will draw kids like flies to light. I mean, like moths to the bulb. Okay, what kid in the world would not go over and see a spinner rack full of comics and not go over there and check it out?
yeah,
Okay, and they see a comic for $1 or $2. Okay,
right.
that is an impulse buy. Okay, most kids have $1 or $2. They could try out a comic book, for that much, and pick it up, and that's something they can own, something that's theirs, something that they can keep, something they can read over and over and over again, and if it's something that they really like, they're going to treasure that forever. Okay,
Mm,
so that's another thing, because if you think about it, if I were to put a spinner rack at every 7-Eleven in the country, just 7-Eleven, okay, you're talking about 13,000 locations. Okay, and that's a lot of locations, and So if I were to get spinner racks into 7-Elevens, you get into Buc-ee's, into Walmarts, things like that. I mean, you're talking about a huge saturation of comic books at every corner of the country. It will be unavoidable for people not to see a comic book spinner rack. And those, in fact, a lot of them will say, "Oh, I remember these things," and they'll check it out. Especially if it's full of colorful, really nice looking titles, on the shelves. And then after that, I always go non-exclusive. It says none of this exclusive crap. Okay, we want to get our books to as many distributors as possible, and we'll make it worth their while. We'll make sure that we give them really good discounts. That we'll work with them, to make sure that they get our product distributed as far as we can possibly get it distributed. And just make it so that it's you get maximum exposure. I would also do a lot of advertising. Okay, I mean, like, why isn't Disney Plus not advertise any Marvel comics on their damn streaming service? Okay, do they ever put a little thing there that says, "Hey, go to your local comic book store and buy the latest Marvel comic," on their streaming? It costs them nothing to do that. I don't know why they don't do that. Same with HBO Max. They own these fucking DC comics, Say, hey, if you like DC, if you like what you just watched, go to your local comic store and buy the latest, DC comics there. Why don't they do that? It costs them nothing to do that. It makes no sense to me that they don't do that. And if something big is going to happen, maybe I'll buy a billboard in a huge city and say, Batman's getting married, huge billboard. Go to your local comic book store. When
buy a billboard, buy a digital billboard, and have it digitally done.
Hell yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, make it and make people aware of it. So that, I mean, the thing about it is people are not aware. A lot of people they probably don't even know that comics are still coming out.
Right.
So,
that's a good point. Yeah.
If you expose it and you saturate everything, then it becomes part of their everyday lives. Because if you know that every week there's going to be new comics on the comic book rack, on the spinner rack, they're going to make it a habit of checking it out every week to see what's new. Because that's the good thing about comics is that you have a constant rotation of new material and people are wanting to check it out. They don't want to miss out on the next big thing or something to entertain themselves or entertain their kids. I mean, if you go to like a Walmart or Buc-ee's and you can buy a comic for $1 or $2 to entertain your kid, on a long trip or something that they have, that they can carry, then you're creating the next generation of readers.
I've said more interesting where mommy takes little Johnny to the store. Johnny's good during the shopping trip, and then Johnny's reward is a $2 comic book, and then mommy's happy because Johnny's quiet in the car on the way home. And I have a niece, and she's a little tiger, and I love her to death. But if I can get her quiet by giving her a plushie, and then my sister, who's her mother, is thrilled, and then she's happy for 5 minutes. My sister's like, "Oh, I go to the bathroom," and I know she's not going to get into trouble. And it sounds crazy, but I guarantee you, parents think like that. And for $2, if they know that little Johnny's going to be quiet in the car all the way home, and I was like, thank God. So that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, the thing, I think the biggest mistake the comic industry has made is they're not fostering the next generation of readers. The next generation readers are going to grow up reading manga. Okay, that's their next generation. So they're going to be the ones who grow up with manga, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that unless we can adapt and to the challenge, manga is going to take over. So what's the thing is that the thing about manga though is that the thing about manga is that it is, I mean, it has the advantage of having a lot of material, but it's still kind of strange to most people. Young people seem to like it, but older readers, they don't seem to really gravitate toward it, and so right now, if I would also include manga in my repertoire. I mean, I would take like I would create new characters that are more manga centric, basically. Maybe I'll create a manga division in Marvel DC. This you're to be the editor, and you're going to create, all new manga titles, specifically, and maybe I'll create a romance comics division, or maybe I'll create a horror comics division. Maybe I'll create a science fiction comics division. So that we have people who are not people who don't care about superheroes have a choice. They can say, "Oh, I want to read a science fiction stories. I want to read a horror stories. I want to read a romance story." So it gives people more of a choice. And that attracts even more people to the spinner rack because they have something that's maybe tailored to them. Yeah. So, but that's what I would do if I was in charge. But alas,
I'll
I
tell
am
you
not.
what I would do. I'll tell you what I would do. And
Emperor.
this is I would take a different approach where I would want to foster relationships outside of comics, and I would want to foster relationships with football, baseball, touch sports, because the trend that I'm noticing is that more people are into anime, are into sports, more people who are into comics are into sports, and I would want to capture some of those positions. WWE is a big place, AEW is a big place, and obviously I'd want to find cousins of, pop culture related. Also, there's plenty of music, there's plenty of bands, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to do cross promotion. And I think that's where I would start. Obviously, I would want to print a bunch of books. I would want to do some of what Ben was saying, some of what you were saying, but I would also want to take a much larger social media approach where I think the places are TikTok, because a bunch of people are there. And then obviously you have to figure out how to convert on TikTok and just get people aware. Because I don't know if taking out a billboard's the answer as much as running an ad on TikTok. Hey, Batman's getting married this Wednesday, issue 77 at your local comic shop. Here, do you want to know where your local comic shop is? And then you click the button and then it pops up. Because I think
that's a great idea, because
Yeah.
it relatively costs you nothing. Okay, that's it costs you a few seconds to put it up, and it costs you nothing. And if you can get any type of exposure for it, then that's to your advantage.
That's what I would do. I would take way more of a social media approach, because especially if we're trying to foster the next generation, you got to go where they're at. And I don't know that a billboard is the best use, but I like the idea of a billboard. But why
Same
not?
mentality. Yeah.
Why not go to your area?
Saturate. That's do both. The thing is that you do what you do whatever it takes to maximize your exposure.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. And then obviously, I don't know if I would do a royalty, but I would maybe do bonuses. And I would do tier up bonuses that, hey, if you're in a movie, your character is used in this, maybe you get $300 every time it's used in a comic book. And maybe not a pure straight out royalty, but definitely give people skin in the game. And also, if you're with us for 10 years, for every year you're with us and you created a character and it was used 10 times, your bonus of when that character reappears goes up by $50.
Sure. Or we can give you health insurance.
Yeah.
that works too. I mean, I'm not opposed to anything, but my goal would be that I think tier up rewards.
Yeah, if you work for us for 5 years or 10 years, we'll give you health insurance.
Yeah.
But there's a million things, or even like a match or anything of that nature. I would get these artists at cons and I'll get them in front of fans, because I think it's very important that artists and writers meet fans. And I would basically get my top tier team out to every con that they could go to. And I would make it that you guys have to go to 15 to 18 cons, and that, signing partially for free. I understand there's money in that, but also just getting to meet fans and seeing what they're reacting to. Because I think that would help too, because when I know Nandor is a real person, or I know Ben's a real person, me now buying your book changes our relation. But
that's a great idea. You could have someone who's sort of like a coordinator. He has a list of creators. If you're a convention, you can contact me, and say, hey, we'd like to see if such and such is available. And then you look, on your list and say, yeah, he's available, but this is what you're going to need to get him out there, like a flight out there, tail, blah, 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 or something like to that effect. And this way, you can be a sort of coordinator between a liaison between a convention and the creator,
Yeah.
That's what I would do, but I know Nandor has to get out of here because I know he has another event that I don't know whose show I'm occupying and taking up, but
No, you're
obviously
okay, man. Yeah.
I
Thanks
don't
for
want to do that anymore and take up any more of your time. Obviously, I don't want to take any more of Ben Dunn's precious time either. Congratulations, by the way, Ben. Texas did win the World Series, so just want to make that crystal clear. That it won me a bunch of money, so it's all right.
Well, it's about time, I say.
Hey, it's better than Houston winning. I'm sick of Houston winning. So if I would rather it be the Rangers than the Astros, especially after they're cheating the baseball. But I digress. I want to thank both of you, but obviously before I let both of you go, I do want to give you both an opportunity to quickly promote yourselves. So I don't know who wants to promote themselves quickly and efficiently, because I think both of you still have projects going on.
After you.
All right. So yeah, I just want to thank you for having me again, and great to talk with both of you about this topic. Yeah, it's been great. And right now I have the Fabled offering on Kickstarter. We're in the final week. We have 7 days left, and it's a sci-fi fantasy adventure that follows a warrior princess on a quest to save herself while also carrying her unborn child. And if you love Lord of the Rings, if you love Game of Thrones, if you love Star Wars or comics like Seven to Eternity or Heavy Metal Magazine comics from there, you're going to love this book. And you can find me on YouTube at Foxhole Comics is my YouTube channel. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, or what I like to call X Twitter. And you can find me there at Nandor Fox. So that's me.
I've got really nothing to promote other than just Antarctic Press in general. We're a publisher. I'm the editor of Planet Comics, Exciting Comics, and Mangazi and Jungle Comics, and I'm the creator of Tomorrow Girl and Ninja High School, and those are the 2 titles. And Penguina. So check those out. Your local comic book store. Tell them to carry AP products if they don't already, and that's pretty much it.
And then I'm just going to quickly promote me. Obviously, I am Pop Anime Comics on X/Twitter, YouTube, Pop Anime Comics, Facebook, Pop Anime Comics. I run the group Indie Comic Connect, so you can join there. Just fill out the questions, and we accept almost everybody as long as everybody answers the question. We're a fun group to hang out with, and you can promote as much as you want in my group for free. So it's very important. As well as I am on TikTok at Pop Anime Comics, and I run an eBay store called Pop Anime Comics Collectibles. And again, I bought the whole print run of this one in the foil, all 15 of them. All 15 of them, so you can only buy it from me. And yes, I will do it again. At some point, I'm just not going to say when. And everybody buys from me. My good friend Preston Poulter sent me a bunch of books for free that are included in every single person's order. So everybody's getting one of these. So if you order from me a comic book, you will get one of these. And I have plenty of cool merch. And this weekend, I'm probably going to be adding about 20 to 30 other books into my store. So you never know what's coming into my store. And I recommend that if you're looking for rare books, hit me up, because there's a good chance I have them or I know somebody who does have them. But that's everything that I got. And I would like to thank both my guests, obviously, Nandor. Thank you for coming on. Ben Dunn. It's Ben Dunn, guys. He's amazing. And you should know Ben Dunn. And if you don't know Ben Dunn, I'm sorry, but you're missing out on life. So
well, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, anytime. The pleasure is mine. But I believe that is a wrap, everybody. And peace.
All right.
All right. See ya.